They say every city has a heartbeat, a rhythm of life, of traffic, of people rushing to work. But if you listen closely to the silence between the beats, you hear something else. You hear the whispers of the things we try to forget. Welcome to Haunted Reality Stories. Tonight we are traveling to the heart of the United Kingdom, Birmingham, a city of industry, of history, and of darkness. You might know it for the Peaky Blinders or the bustling bullring, but beneath the concrete and the canals, there are stories from the last decade that will make your blood run cold. I'm not talking about Victorian ghosts tonight. I'm talking about the monsters that walk among us right now. The events you are about to hear are real. They happened between 2015 and today. They are the stains on the pavement that the rain can't wash away. So turn off the lights, lock your doors, and let's descend into the 5 most disturbing events to strike Birmingham in recent history. Story number 5. Imagine a Saturday evening. It's November 2019. You're a parent. You've taken your kids to Star City, a massive entertainment complex in Birmingham, to see the new Disney movie Frozen 2. Popcorn, soda, excited children in Elsa dresses. It's supposed to be the safest place in the world. But outside the theater doors, a storm was gathering, not of snow, but of steel. Around 5:00 p.m., ripples of tension began to move through the complex. Security guards noticed groups of teenagers gathering. Not 10, not 20, but nearly 100, and they weren't there for a movie. Witnesses described a sudden shift in the atmosphere. The air grew heavy. Then, the first scream tore through the lobby. It wasn't a fist fight. It was a medieval skirmish in a modern cinema. The police were called, and when they arrived, they didn't find kids pushing and shoving. They found an army. Youths, some as young as 13, pulled weapons from their waistbands. Machetes. Yes, machetes, inside a movie theater. Pandemonium broke out. Families watching Frozen 2 heard the roar of the violence bleeding through the walls. The police drew their batons, but they were swarmed. Officers were slashed. Taser red dots danced through the smoke and the screaming crowd. The complex went into total lockdown. Can you imagine the terror? Sitting in the dark, clutching your child, while just outside the door, 100-strong mob is hacking at police officers with blades. It was a scene of total lawlessness, a flash mob of violence that erupted for reasons no one could fully explain. Was it a gang war, a planned riot, or just the madness of the crowd taking over? By the time the dust settled, 7 officers were injured, shaken to their core. A 13-year-old girl was among those arrested. A 13-year-old. It remains one of the most surreal and terrifying lapses of order in the city's modern history, a reminder that safety is just an illusion that can be shattered in seconds. Story number 4. Urban Exploration, circa 2021. Now, let's move away from the crowds and into the silence. If you look at the Birmingham skyline, you'll see the skeletons of the past. Abandoned office blocks, empty towers. One such place is the Five Ways Tower. To the average commuter, it's just an eyesore, but to the urban exploration community, it's a place where you do not go alone. I found a report from a local explorer. Let's call him Dav. This happened just a few years ago. Dav and a group of friends decided to crack the Five Ways Tower. They wanted to see the view from the roof. They climbed the back fences, slipping into the rotting carcass of the building. Inside, it was a time capsule. Papers strewn on the floor, calendars from the 90s rotting on the walls. But as they ascended the stairwell, the air changed. Reddit threads and local forums have whispered about this tower for years. They say the acoustics are wrong. Dav claims that when they reached the 15th floor, they heard a sound, clang. They froze. It sounded like metal hitting concrete. Then again, clang, clang. They thought it was copper thieves, standard danger in these places. They stayed quiet, hiding in the shadows of the stairwell, but the footsteps that followed weren't the heavy bootsteps of a thief. They were light, packing, and they were coming from the floor above them. Dev peeked through the gap in the stair railing. He pointed his flashlight up just for a second. He swears he saw a face, not looking down at him, but looking through the gap in the stairs upside down, pale, gaunt, and smiling. The group didn't ask questions. They ran. As they sprinted down 15 flights of stairs, the building seemed to come alive. Doors slammed on floors they weren't even on. The sound of metal cans, hundreds of them being swept off a table, echoed through the shaft. When they finally burst out into the streetlights of Birmingham, gasping for air, they looked back up. On the 15th floor, a single light flickered, in a building that had been cut off from the grid for 20 years. Squatters, perhaps, but those who have been inside the Five Ways Tower say there is a darkness there that watches you, and it doesn't like visitors. Story number 3. December 16, 2016. We often think of prison as a place of control. Iron bars, guards, strict schedules. But in December 2016, HMP Birmingham, a Victorian-era fortress in Winson Green, became the stage for the worst prison riot in the UK since the Suitcase Siege. It started innocently enough. A prisoner jumped onto the suicide netting in one of the wings. When a guard went to negotiate, the prisoner snatched his keys. In that split second, the balance of power shifted. Within minutes, the keys were used to unlock cells, hundreds of them. The roar of 600 released prisoners echoed through the atrium. They surged against the gates, overpowering the minimal staff. The guards, realizing they were vastly outnumbered and facing weapons made from table legs and pool cues, had no choice. They retreated. They locked the outer perimeter and abandoned the wings. For 12 hours, the prisoners owned the prison. Snapchat videos began to leak out to the public. We saw inmates wearing guard helmets, burning files, smashing computers. They broke into the medical supplies. It was a party at the end of the world. Smoke billowed from the windows, visible across the city. But here is the disturbing part. As night fell, the mood in the prison shifted from celebration to hunting. Groups formed. Old scores were settled. Without guards, the weak had no protection from the strong. The party became a Lord of the Flies nightmare. Riot squads, the Tornado, assembled. It took them 12 hours to retake the prison. They had to use flashbangs and engage in hand-to-hand combat to reclaim the wings. When the sun rose, HMP Birmingham was a ruin, but the psychological scar remained. For half a day, right in the middle of the city, the rule of law had completely evaporated. Story number 2. May 2020. This next story is not about chaos. It's about the quiet, cold calculation of evil. It was May 2020. The UK was deep in the first COVID lockdown. The streets were empty. People were staying home, staying safe. But in a shared house in Birmingham, a 28-year-old woman named Phoenix Nets was living a nightmare. Phoenix was a kind soul, but she had fallen on hard times and was living in a HMO, a house of multiple occupation. Living with her was a woman named Garrica Gordon. Gordon became obsessed with Phoenix. It started with control, demanding to know where she was, checking her phone. But in April 2020, that obsession turned lethal. Gordon stabbed Phoenix to death, but that isn't the hook of this story. It's what happened after. For weeks, yes, weeks, Phoenix lay dead in her room. Gordon didn't flee, she stayed. She ordered a circular saw online. She tried to dispose of the body, but the saw wouldn't work. So she engaged in a macabre deception. She took Phoenix's phone. She messaged Phoenix's friends and family, pretending to be her. She told them she was moving back to London. She used voice notes, mimicking Phoenix's voice, to tell her own mother she was fine. Can you imagine receiving a text from your daughter, your friend, not knowing that the person sending it is the monster who took her life? Eventually, Gordon bought 2 large suitcases. She packed Phoenix into them. She booked a taxi during lockdown to the Forest of Dean, miles away. Police officers patrolling for lockdown breakers spotted her standing by a quarry in the dead of night with 2 suitcases. She looked suspicious. When they opened the cases, the horror of what had happened in that Birmingham bedroom was revealed to the world. It is a chilling reminder that sometimes the most terrifying thing isn't a ghost or a riot. It's the person sleeping in the room next door. Story number 1. And now, we reach the number 1 spot. I must warn you, this story is difficult. It involves the very worst of humanity. It deals with the death of a child. If you have a heart, this will break it. In June 2020, in a seemingly normal home in Solihull, just on the edge of Birmingham, a 6-year-old boy named Arthur Labinjo Hughes collapsed. When the paramedics arrived, they found a child who looked like he had been through a war zone. He was covered in 130 bruises. He was starving. The investigation that followed peeled back the layers of a house of pure horror. Arthur had been living with his father, Thomas Hughes, and his stepmother, Emma Tustin. During the lockdown, while the world was hiding from a virus, Arthur was trapped in a cage of their making. Tustin had turned the house into a torture chamber. She forced Arthur to stand in the hallway for 14 hours a day. 14 hours, staring at a wall. If he moved, he was beaten. If he tried to sit, the floor was pulled from under him. She poisoned him with salt. They found massive levels of sodium in his system because she had been force-feeding him salt-laced food to make him thirst, then denying him water. And the most haunting part, they had CCTV in the house. The jury had to watch video after video of this little boy, weak and dying, crying out, "No one loves me, and no one is going to feed me." On the day he died, Tustin beat his head against a hard surface so violently it caused fatal brain damage. She then sat on the sofa and ate a chocolate bar while he lay dying on the floor, waiting 12 minutes before calling an ambulance. The city of Birmingham and the entire nation wept for Arthur. The House of Shadows stands as a monument to how evil can hide in plain sight, behind closed curtains, in a quiet suburban street. It is, without a doubt, the most horrific event to stain the city in the last 10 years. Visual direction. The narrator leans in closer to the camera. The music cuts out abruptly to total silence. Narrator, these were not stories from a movie script. These were real people, real fear, real pain. The cinema, the abandoned tower, the prison, the rented room, the family home. 5 places in Birmingham, 5 reminders that reality is often far scarier than any ghost story I could invent. I'm your narrator. This has been Haunted Reality Stories. Sleep well if you can.